Hey, we're back, and this is Robin Jackson, host of the Cult Life Show. Hey, and welcome to the very first episode of Cult Life for 2019. Happy New Year, and I wish you all the very best for the year ahead. I had a well-deserved break, and I'm raring to go. I have a few projects lined up for this year, so listen out for that. These include 2 new books and another podcast launch on one of my other passions, which is skills development and diversity. So that'll be interesting. I'm going to have quite a few interesting guests on that show. And I will be recording the very first episode towards the end of this month, January. So look out for that. But first, allow me to boast and brag for a moment. Those of you who follow me on Twitter might have seen the tweet about my daughter graduating and passing high school with 4 distinctions. So you are listening to a very proud father right now. She will be going off to university to study a degree in psychology at the end of this month. So my baby will be flying the coop and leaving the nest. So higher education is definitely what she will be pursuing. And this brings me to the topic of today's show, and that is cults and psychology. Now, many religions and cults frown upon and have a disdain for the field of psychology and psychiatry. And I'm going to explore some of the writings and utterances of 2 of these cults, showing their distrust of this academic discipline and this human science, so to speak. Now, what is psychology? According to the South African College of Applied Psychology, it is the scientific study of multidimensional facets of the mind and human behavior. It seeks to understand the developmental, psychosocial, and environmental factors that influence experiences and shape individuals and groups. Now, psychology explores many fascinating concepts, including perception, cognition, emotion, motivation, brain functioning, our personalities, behavior, and interpersonal relationships, to name just a few of the facets that the field of psychology explores. And the study of psychology ultimately aims to benefit individuals and society in the enhancement of mental health, as well as in an understanding and solving problems in many other contexts and spheres of human activity. Well, let's look at how some of the cults and religions view psychology and those who practice it. Now, of course, firstly, I'm going to be quoting from my former religion, the Jehovah's Witnesses. And they are a group that does not put all of their trust in psychology or psychiatry. Now, the Watchtower does not forbid a witness from seeing a psychiatrist or psychologist. However, it does speak disparagingly of these professions. Experiences are related of how becoming a witness succeeds where psychiatry or psychology has failed. Psychologists are to be avoided because it shows the person has lost faith in the Bible's ability to provide the solutions, and will likely direct people away from the Watchtower religion and may resort to demonic hypnosis, in inverted commas. And of course, this can be seen in some of the writings. And the first quote I'll quote from the Watchtower of 1952, January the 15th, page 53. And I quote, it says, "So we must shun the false guides of men and their false religions, babbling psychologists, wordy psychiatrists, and polluted politicians, all of which have built up such tremendous reputations as colossal failures. Look at the messes they have made. Know them by their rotten fruits, reject them for their fruits. Now, the next quote made me giggle a little bit, and it comes from the Awake magazine, 1954. It says, "Without doubt, psychologists have a lot to learn, and they think they know more than they actually do, or they would not have let two chimpanzees make such monkeys out of them." Now, I don't know what that refers to, but that, just made me giggle a little bit. The Awake of 1960, March the 8th, out of page 27, it says, "As a rule, for a Christian to go to a worldly psychiatrist is an admission of defeat. It amounts to going down to Egypt for help." As referenced from the Bible reference says, Isaiah 31 verse 1. Often when a witness of Jehovah goes to a psychiatrist, the psychiatrist will try to persuade him that his troubles are caused by his religion, entirely overlooking the fact that the Christian witnesses of Jehovah are the best oriented, happiest, and most contented group of people on the face of the earth. They have the least need for psychiatrists. Also, more and more psychiatrists are resorting to hypnosis, which is a demonic form of worldly wisdom. Yeah, so they keep harping on this hypnosis, which is a demonic form of worldly wisdom. And once again, peddling. So, since 1960, the writing says that Jehovah's Witnesses are the most happiest and contented group of people on the face of the earth. Well, the Watchtower in 1990, September the 1st, page 15, and I'm going to read from that Watchtower. It says, "The sister then told her how a knowledge of Bible truth had helped her. She had lost an 18-year-old daughter in death and had gone into a state of deep depression for 8 years. Neither psychiatrists nor costly medications helped her to overcome this depression. Several times, she said, she was hospitalized, but no improvement resulted. Her household was taken care of by servants because she herself was not able to take care of anything. She tried to commit suicide because she had lost interest in life, and nothing seemed to help. Then, she told the lady, one day Jehovah's Witnesses called and left her some Bible literature. That sparked her interest in God's Word, and she began to read the Bible all the way through. Something started to change within her. She began to get up in the morning and take an interest in her household. She finally decided to take care of the house by herself and found she was able to do so. It was as though she had never been sick. This made her feel very happy. She did not return to the psychiatrist. Her will to live was stimulated by her knowledge of God's Word, and this proved to be the best medicine. She looked for Jehovah's Witnesses, and they started a regular study with her. She also began to attend meetings, and very soon she got baptized. No longer bothered with depression, she now finds joy in serving Jehovah. And that's just an example from the Watchtower how the governing body and the Watchtower and Jehovah's Witnesses have a very disparaging outlook on the field of psychology, and of course trying to put the Bible's teachings, or the Watchtower's teachings, above the professional health science of psychology and psychiatry. And I want to relate a little story here just to show you how Jehovah's Witnesses are so besotted with this whole demonic possession, and how this is more likely the cause of your mental health issues. Now, an acquaintance of mine had been suffering from terrible nightmares and panic attacks, and after a while it escalated to him experiencing and having terrible outbursts of anger and violence. Of course, his JW family at the time encouraged him to become more spiritual, and so did the elders, of course. Read the Bible more, they said, and so on. And despite all of this, one night the outbursts and violence, were at a level never seen before. His sister called me, and I could sense the panic and fear in her voice. She told me what was happening and said that this was in her opinion, was a terrible demon attack. And I calmly said to her to get off the phone and get him to a doctor as soon as possible. Because to me, it all sounded like a manic depressive episode or a man that was suffering from some sort of mental illness. I had done some independent reading on the subject. So, to cut a long story short, he was eventually diagnosed as being bipolar and was put onto medication. But this was just, I just wanted to illustrate how witnesses are indoctrinated to seek only, as they say, Jehovah's blessing. Read the Bible, they say. Go out in the ministry. Keep yourself busy with spiritual matters. Despite the fact that you may be suffering from a debilitating physical or mental illness. Now, Scientology is another cult that has a disdain for psychology and psychiatry. Now, notice this next quote from their very own website. And I'm going to quote, it says, "Why is psychology opposed to psychiatric abuses? The Scientology objection to psychiatry does not stem from any desire to deny the insane treatment. Rather, the Church objects to the mistreatment of the insane, which is psychiatry's historical hallmark. That is why the Church supports the Citizens Commission of Human Rights, which works to expose and eradicate the brutalization of patients in the name of mental health. Over the years, Citizens Commission has investigated and exposed thousands upon thousands of cases of psychiatric negligence, abuse, and brutality. Nor do Scientologists believe people should be stigmatized with labels and treated with cures that have no basis in science and are brutal in the extreme. Through its long and tragic history, psychiatry has invented numerous cures, which they put in inverted commas, which eventually proved destructive in the extreme. In the 18th and 19th centuries, mentally troubled patients were literally subjected to torture devices. Next, it was ice baths and insulin shock. Then, electroconvulsive therapy that caused broken teeth and bones, as well as loss of memory and regression into comatose states. Next, it was prefrontal lobotomies with an ice pick through the eye socket. Today, it is drugs. It is now routine psychiatric practice to label and stigmatize youth with wholesale diagnosis of mental disorders. It is staggeringly profitable. It is a staggeringly profitable business. But while psychiatrists rake in billions, society receives a new generation of lifelong drug addicts, and thus still more customers for psychotropic drugs. Today, the marketing of antidepressants has likewise reached nightmarish proportions, and the scenario becomes even more disturbing when one considers the explosively violent episodes such drugs precipitate. Moreover, there is categorically no evidence that diseases such drugs claim to treat even exist, which is to say, it's all an elaborate and deadly hoax. This is not Scientology belief or opinion. This is fact, and this is why Scientologists oppose psychiatric abuse. So there you have it. Scientology says there is no evidence that the mental diseases that these drugs treat even exist. And they quote, and they say that there's been a lot of abuse when it comes to psychiatric patients, and we don't deny that. We know there's been a lot of reported abuse and exposure of many of the psychological and psychiatric abuses that have taken place over the years. We don't dispute that. Now, but to deny scientific evidence that mental diseases and that these drugs help people, in my opinion, is a travesty. We've moved on from the 18th and 19th century. Science has improved. Science has made vast strides, in both the health sciences and physical sciences and the medication fields. We are in the 21st century, for crying out loud. Without psychologists and therapists, people who are professionally trained to handle and deal with the human psyche and all the mental illnesses that us as a human species sometimes have to endure, where would we be? Scientology especially themselves are guilty of a lot of mental and psychological abuses. So, trained psychologists very often assist us to come to terms and deal with the devastating effects that cults often impose on their members. As we've seen recently in the exposure, in a lot of the documentaries, Leah Remini's Scientology, The Aftermath, and so forth, Jehovah's Witnesses and Scientology as a whole are very destructive and abusive organizations. The psychological and psychiatry, those fields, and therapists, trained and registered therapists, are there to help a lot of former members, to come to terms and to deal with the after effects of these organizations. Thank you for joining me, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button to get notified of when the next episode becomes available. And until next time, bye for now.